In today's video, we have a minor NHL trade to discuss, we have several more roster cuts to discuss out of NHL training camps, and we have some more updates in the latest NHL trade rumors. We'll jump into all the news coming up next. Welcome back to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of news items to cover off here today, and let's get started with a very minor trade that happened earlier between the Colorado Avalanche and the San Jose Sharks. The San Jose Sharks have traded a 25-year-old minor league goaltender Antoine Bibeau over to the Colorado Avalanche in exchange for minor league defenseman Nikolai Milosh. Now, Bibeau might be a name you're familiar with. He is a former Toronto Maple Leaf prospect goalie. Was traded over to the Sharks and now goes over to the Colorado Avalanche. Now, the Avs find themselves a little bit thin on goaltending depth, so makes sense for them to go out and acquire somebody who can play within their minor league system. So, like I said, a very minor trade, but something I wanted to mention here to you today. Now, there's been some more roster cuts from around NHL training camps. A couple of notable ones I found interesting out of the Winnipeg Jet organization. They've cut young forwards Logan Stanley, Christian Vesalainen, and Logan Shaw. They've all been assigned to their minor league affiliate team, and they're kind of being outperformed by some other prospects in camp that I didn't expect to do so. So they will start the year with the Manitoba Moose organization in the American Hockey League, but Vesalainen especially I found quite surprising. I really thought this would be the year that he would grab a spot regardless of what was going on with Laine or Connor. You throw that into the mix and it's just kind of confusing, but I haven't really had a chance to see the Jets a whole lot in this preseason, but obviously management felt he's not quite ready. On the blue line, they still have some youngsters like Tucker Poolman and Sami Niku in camp, and it looks as though they very well might get a chance to start with the NHL roster there as well. The Boston Bruins have made a round of cuts as well, including young defenseman Urho Vakanainen. Also cut Jeremy Lauzon, Zach Senershin, and Kyle Kaiser. They've all been assigned to their American Hockey League affiliate. One prospect to keep your eye on with the Bruins organization that right now still survived the round of cuts and looking like a decent chance to jump into their lineup, at least for a little while to start the year, would be young forward Jack Stugnicka. Like, so far, things are looking good for him. I think he's had a pretty good camp, a pretty good preseason. He's still hanging around. I mean, he could still be a late cut because they're not completely done with that. They don't have their roster completely set, but he is another young forward prospect within that Bruins organization to keep your eye on that very well might end up having a decent impact on them when the season starts. Now, I also want to touch base on the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I don't want to get into a whole lot of detail on the Auston Matthews situation. I try to avoid talking about a lot of things that affect players personally. Obviously, what's going on with Matthews has had a major impact on the team as well. As we know, Matthews is facing some charges. It was made aware that the team didn't even know about it until the news broke through social media just in the last couple days. So obviously it's a messy situation. And there's been a lot of questions around the captaincy of the Maple Leafs because the Maple Leafs organization did announce earlier at the beginning of training camp that they were prepared to name a captain and that there would be a captain this year. Now, they didn't give a specific date or time when that announcement was going to come, but they did indicate that there would be one named. So many felt that they more than likely would do that either right before opening night, like within a day or two at most, probably leading up to their first game of the regular season. I would imagine they'll have some kind of ceremony in Toronto, probably invite some former captains, those who can attend or still around, to be a part of the celebration as well, and really celebrate naming a new captain. They haven't had one in a long time since they traded defenseman Dion Phaneuf to the Ottawa Senators quite some time ago now. So obviously this has been something that's been in the making for a long time. Many believe that Matthews, along with John Tavares and Morgan Rielly, were the only three logical candidates who could wear the C for the Maple Leafs. And I know that earlier in the preseason, there was a lot of people speculating that there was a leak that Matthews was going to be captain. There were some images of him that were leaked from early in the preseason when they do a lot of their photography and things when the camp first opens, of him wearing the C on his jersey. Now, I can't say that those shots were definitely legit. With technology nowadays and people's skills to alter images, I really don't know how much legitimacy was to that, if there really was something leaked or maybe it was just something that somebody created and whatever. I really don't know, but I know there was a lot of talk indicating Matthews was going to be captain, and now with everything going on, people are saying, well, could he still be captain? Would it be okay? Would it not be okay? And there's this massive debate over it. But what I will say is this: it looks as though, based on everything we're hearing now between the Maple Leafs, between Mike Babcock, Kyle Dubas, and some NHL insiders like Bob McKenzie and Elliot Friedman, it looks as though that they've already had their mind made up, and this situation will not impact naming a captain or who their choice was. So many believe now that Matthews wasn't going to be captain, and that wasn't part of the plan anyways, and that more than likely it's going to be John Tavares. In my opinion, John Tavares would be the ideal candidate anyways. I mean, obviously he's from Toronto. He's signed long-term. He's worn the C before. He's had a lot of success in his career. He's a former #1 overall pick, just like Matthews was. He's had a ton of success between the World Juniors and the Olympics. He's used to playing on the big stage internationally. He's now used to playing on the big stage in Toronto. He's excellent at dealing with the media. As we know, working in a market like Toronto is probably the toughest, or one of the toughest at least, with dealing with the media, in and around each and every game, especially when the team has struggles. It's not easy facing the music and answering all those questions. And Tavares is excellent with the media. Nothing seems to faze him. He's pretty straight-faced no matter what happens. It doesn't matter if they won, they lost, something happened, where he had to answer questions about this Matthews situation. Like, he's just pretty much even keel the entire time. He works hard on the ice, and really I just think he'd be a great selection. He's squeaky clean. I don't think you have to worry about anything about John Tavares' reputation in any shape or form. So in my opinion, it looks as though, based on what we're hearing now, that the plan was to name Tavares captain, not Matthews. At least that's what they want us to believe, and that very well could have been part of the plan. We'll probably never know. Even if there was any plan to name Matthews captain, I'm sure now it's going to be put to everybody that the plan was to not name him captain, just to make it look like their decision wasn't changed. But based on what everybody's saying, I don't think that was necessarily part of the plan anyway. So that's all I'm going to comment on that situation. I just really want to talk about the captaincy issue with the Maple Leafs, and I feel it is going to be Tavares. I'm not really going to get into too many thoughts on the Matthews legal situation. I'll let that process play out, and then once it's all settled, perhaps I'll make a comment or give my thoughts at that time. But that's all I'm really going to say about that situation. Now, jumping over to some of the latest NHL trade rumors, I just want to touch base quickly on the Montreal Canadiens here again. Now, there isn't any new rumors about what they might be looking to do, but I just see some comments from Marc Bergevin on the Jonathan Drouin trade rumors that have been heating up. Now, we've talked about a couple times here in the past week. Marc Bergevin was asked about the rumors that have been going around, and he said that those rumors come from some guy in his basement in Toronto. Well, I really don't think that's the case, but keep in mind, general managers are never going to come out and publicly say, yes, I would like to trade that player. Here's what I'm looking for, and publicly acknowledge what they want and kind of play their cards openly to the media. That's never going to happen. And this is the same man, Marc Bergevin, who said he would never trade PK Subban, he wouldn't trade Max Pacioretty, and then he did afterwards. So, like, general managers are not going to come out and say that. And in Marc Bergevin's case, I'm not trying to pick on him specifically. I just want to make everybody aware that, because I see comments all the time, well, this GM said this and this GM said that. That's not going to happen. It's like, you can't really take what they say at face value. They're not going to come out and tell you publicly to the media all their plans and what they want to trade and what players are talking about or anything like that. Like, that's just not how things work. So keep in mind, just because he's denied the rumors, I just personally can't imagine the fact that there hasn't been discussions with other GMs and other executives around the league, indicating that there have been talks and that it is somebody that they're looking to move. I mean, obviously they're not going to do it if the right deal doesn't come along. And at this point, Jonathan Drouin's trade value is low. There's been a lot of talk about how he's just not the player he used to be, and I guess we will see what happens. But I would not be surprised to see him traded, and at the same time, I would not be surprised to see him on the roster come opening night, and for a decent amount of time yet, because obviously they can't get what they want until he starts to play better. And if he starts to play better, maybe they decide to keep him. It's really hard to say, but he makes a lot of money, hasn't been performing to their level of expectations, and it's just natural that they would consider moving a player like that. And I do believe that there definitely has been some talks around that player. Now, I want to touch base as well on the Columbus Blue Jackets. Obviously, as I mentioned before, the possibility of Sonny Milano being traded is a real possibility. They feel if they put him on waivers, he's likely going to get claimed and then he'll be gone. Of course, as we know, he's another player who have faced some legal troubles from earlier in this offseason. That very well might diminish his return value. I mean, teams might be scared away or not want to take that on until that's all settled. It's really difficult to say, although it doesn't sound like there's going to be a whole lot of anything come from that case. But I guess until it's all resolved and settled, we really don't know. But the Blue Jackets are certainly in position where they apparently might be looking to package him along with a possible defenseman to try to acquire another forward who they can certainly help with their scoring, as we've talked about, well documented. No surprise, they had a mass exodus at the forward position between Panarin and Duchesne and Dzingel, and they certainly don't have as much offensive firepower as they used to. And with the goaltending being questionable, in my opinion, for the coming year, they're going to need to score more in order to have a chance to win more games and to stay relevant and possibly have a fight for a playoff spot. At least that's how I see things anyways. So for them to package Milano with a defenseman, whether it be like a Ryan Murray or a Nudavara or a David Savard or somebody to that effect, to try to acquire a top 9 forward, certainly is a real possibility. There have been some talks going on. Don't know how close anything has gotten or if there is any specific players they might be targeting. Either way, there are talks ongoing and it's something that they're looking to do. Now, I also want to touch base on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Recently, we discussed the possibility of them trading a goaltender like Tristan Jarry rather than put him on waivers so they don't lose him. And that possibility is still a real one that Jim Rutherford appears to be working on. He's publicly acknowledged the fact that he's likely going to be moving a goaltender. So obviously, he hasn't tipped his hand too much on who it was or who he talked to or what they're looking to bring back or anything of that nature. But he did, express the realistic approach here that they just have too many guys that they're concerned about losing through waivers. So obviously, that makes sense. But there's also talks that they really love to trade Jack Johnson. Of course, they've also come close to doing that before. He was bundled with the Phil Kessel trade going to Minnesota, but of course, that deal never ended up happening because of Kessel's no trade clause, which ultimately turned the trade down from going through. He ended up going to Arizona instead, and it looks as though he might be willing to package another player, maybe like a Brian Rust or somebody like that, to possibly make the deal happen. So could we see a little bit more of a mega deal, maybe involving 2 or 3 players from the Penguins in one significant trade? It certainly is a possibility. It's not quite clear exactly what Rutherford wants back. Obviously, I would imagine it'd probably be a combination of maybe another forward. There really hasn't been a lot of talk about what the expected return would be. They just really want to get assets in return rather than lose Jarry for nothing. Of course, they might have to add a player like that to sweeten the pot for somebody to take Jack Johnson as well. So the return might be, relatively insignificant. It could be picks or a prospect or nothing that's going to immediately help the roster. Not sure they'd really want to include a guy like Brian Rust, but they might have to do what they got to do to kind of sweeten the pot here a little bit. But if they could move Johnson with Jarry as a sweetener, then that very well might be something to get it done. But either way, Jim Rutherford is still quite active, trying to become cap compliant, trying to move some assets to get something in return before he loses them for nothing, which is certainly a smart move by the general manager. So we'll see how successful he can be before the season gets underway. That is all your latest news updates for today. Of course, as always, want to know your thoughts and opinions and everything down in the comment section. So let me know what you think down in the comments, and we'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.